Hey everyone, welcome. Just one sec, we're just setting up a little bit. Sorry for the delay. Cool. So, hi everyone, how are you guys doing? We have a very fun event, a nice event planned up for this Saturday evening. Thanks for logging in, whoever is here. We're gonna start with Let's Flutter in about 5 minutes. So why don't you all introduce yourselves in the chat and maybe we could have a look. We're gonna start with Let's. I hope people are joining in. A 2-day event. It's gonna happen today and tomorrow. So that's nice for somebody who wants to start off with Flutter and who wants to make apps, native apps using Flutter. We're going to be catering to that 4 to 6 p.m. today and tomorrow. So do log in tomorrow also the same time and we'll get started. So just a little introduction about myself. I am Ananya. I'm the WTM ambassador for Bangalore and part of the organizing committee for GDG Bangalore. I've been with them for around a year plus now, and yeah, I'm a developer experience engineer at a company called Kubrick. And do let me know where all of you work, so we could interact a little bit in a online sort of fashion. We'll just wait up for a little more amount of people to join, and then we could get started. So let me talk a little bit about the speaker for today. So Hasnan, he is an associate software engineer at Toshiba, and he wants to go by the introduction of working as a software engineer but a founder of a YouTube channel called Trending Codes. So yeah, and he has been working with iOS, he's been working with Android, and so Flutter was the best choice to cater to both of them. That's what we'll look into today. We are going to look into making HTTP requests using the Flutter in a Flutter app. We're going to see all the best practices there are to parsing JSON in Flutter so that you can get your data from some other source, something like Firebase maybe. I'm not really sure, I'm not a Flutter person, but I hope I am today after today. And on device and local storage. So we're going to look into that too because that is super important. So more in another 2 to 3 minutes we could start. We'll just wait for a couple more people to join. So do check out the amazing YouTube channel called Trending Codes by Hasnan. I feel there's a link. Yes, there's a link in the description below, so you can go and check out his YouTube channel, and you can also go and check out his page, and maybe connect to him and give him a shout out, give him a hi. Yeah. Cool. So okay, so I think we have a few people joining it in a minute. I think we're good to go. I hope Asnan is ready, and I'm going to stop my stream. Hi to everybody who's joined, and even if you're late, it's okay. We're running around 8 to 10 minutes late. That's fine. Cool. So introducing Hassan. Over to you, Hassan.
Let me just check, are we live or not? I just need to make sure that everything is working fine from my side. You know, are you guys able to hear? Are you guys able to see my screen and everything? So I'm just making sure that it's working fine or not from my side. Um, I'll be just checking just a second. Okay, so I got the feedback and we are good to go. So introduction to myself is I'm working as a software engineer in Toshiba Softwares India Private Limited, and I run a YouTube channel called Training Codes, where I morely produce videos about Flutter and especially for the beginners, right? And this session is going to be beginners as well. So we are going to have 2-day sessions, right? The first day session is going to be about how to make HTTP calls, where that is pretty simple, but you should know how you can manage your code or how you can structure your code while you make and API calls in Flutter, right? So that is the more important thing, because my experience when I was noob in Flutter, I was working with Flutter, I used to write, so much of code to just make a simple API calls. And I feel like the beginners do that same, right? So I guess this is going to be pretty helpful to the beginners who are going to work with API calls. Moreover, 90% or 95% of the applications which is being built into the Flutter, they are going to interact with the API, REST APIs. So this is the important part to understand and to know how exactly it works. And the most important thing is how you're going to structure your code, right? What should be the structure and how you're going to implement those stuff, right? So yeah, this is basically, it is going to be moreover for the beginners, right? And where if you're an intermediate, yes, you should know how it works. Maybe you can learn something from the structure which I have maintained, you can see on the screen, right? So today we are going to see about HTTP calls and managing your code, structuring your code, how you can reuse your code again and again. And tomorrow we are going to see how you can use Hive, which is been getting so much popular nowadays in Flutter, and how you can store your data in a local storage or in your app to use it when you are offline or when you don't have an internet connection into your phone, right? So yeah, I guess this is going to be a quite useful session, but moreover, I don't want to make this session as a tutorial, so I'm not going to go ahead and type everything on the screen, right? I have written the code. We are going to see it line by line, and we are going to analyze what is going to happen if we write this piece of code and if we don't use this piece of code, right? So now let's go ahead and check it out. On my screen, you can see in the emulator, we have a list of users, right? Now, these users are being fetched from the server, somewhere hosted on this domain, right? You can see base URL right over here. So these users are coming from this server, right? So the main thing is how you can display these servers, these users from the server in a best way in Flutter, right? So now let's go ahead and take a look what happens if I rerun my app and how we are using or how we are trying to display our users. So if you're new to the Flutter and if you don't know, then we have a material widgets available for this design. We can go ahead and easily use it, right? And if you're already a Flutter developer, then you know how this works, right? So these are the widgets given by the Flutter, by the material package, and we can directly use it right over here. Now, let me just go ahead and reload my app and see what happens if I reload my app. So here we go. You can see right over here. Let me just check my console, what's wrong with it. Yeah, so now you can see we are able to easily see we are getting a loading screen first, and then we are getting the data, right? So how you can manage these things, right? So managing these things is pretty simple, right? You can have a UI which will be detecting that what kind of state it is. Now let's go ahead and understand, let's start from the state management, right? So now when you're going to make an API calls, you're going to have 3 states into your app. The first state is going to be a loading state where your app tries to communicate with the server, right? In that particular time, you need to show some loading screens to the users, right? So your app is going to be in a loading state. Another state is going to be a complete state, right? Or it is going to be an error state. So when apps tries to communicate with the server, you're going to have completed, you're going to get the complete data from the server, or you're going to get an error, right? So you need to manage these 3 states into your app. So right now, let's go ahead and take a look in my repository or in my code. We have inside lib folder right over here, we have 5 folders, I guess. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. So this block is nothing but the business logic component where I'm going to maintain all my business logics over here. So this is the important part for your state management, right? How you're going to manage the state of your app. As I said, we are going to have 3 states and how we are going to define that states. Now let's go ahead and take a look the UI, how I have built and I have separated the code and how I can easily manage the code for state management, right? So I have a main.dart. So of course, this is the file where we will start our app. So right over here, I have a run app details. So I have 2 simple class, which is calling a user screen, right? The scaffold is calling a user screen. I'm going to go ahead and inside user screen and see what we have, right? So inside user screen, the important stuff is right over here. So I have a refresh indicator. So what if I just go ahead and refresh my app, I will get the refresh indicator right away, right? Now, you can see we have something called stream builder, right? And stream builder is having an app state of type user, right? Now, if you just go ahead and take a look, I'm just assigning something to a stream. Of course, we are going to build this stream builder, this stream builder inside our code. But let's just go ahead and analyze what we have inside our UI, right? So the stream builder is nothing but when your state changes, it will notifies you what is happening with your app, right? So right over here, you can see right over here in my switch statement, when I'm going to get an data and I'm going to get the status, what kind of status is there for my app, right? The first is going to be a loading status, second is going to be an completed status, or it is going to be an error status, right? So easily I will put that status into my case, right? Switch case, where I will just see that if my screen is loading, I'm going to call my loading screen. If my state is completed, I'm going to display all the users information. And if I have an error in my API call, I'm going to display an error screen, right? So now we are seeing the state which is been completed, right? This is the status.completed. So this is calling this user list. So let me just go ahead and take a look on this code, what we have inside. So it is pretty simple. I have a list view, which I'm using as separated so that I will get the separated lines over there. And then I have just looped the data which is coming from here, right? So this is pretty simple. Now, how are you going to manage this state? How are you going to identify whether your app is going to be in a loading, or how are you going to identify your app is going to be a completed or an error, right? So now you need to create this state. Now you have something called future builder, right? Which is easily helpful to make this kind of UIs. But yes, if you want to have a full control on your app, I would recommend you to just go ahead and create your own states, because maybe you have some requirements where you're going to have more control on your app and you want your own states. Then the best practice is to maintain your own states and play or display the data with the stream builder. Right, so now this is my view. Let's go ahead and take a look on the folders first, what we have, right? We have something called BLoC, where I'm going to manage my state. I have something called helpers, wherein I'm going to put everything which is going to communicate with the server, right? Then I'm going to have a models. The models is nothing but the simple class which will hold the information of all users, right? Then I have something called repository. This repository is nothing but I will write a get and a get call or a put call or a different calls, right? Get and post kind of calls over here I will put. So we will take a look on each files, right? So let's go ahead and take a start over first how we can start building this stuff. So you know how we have built the UI, how UI is getting managed, but how it works behind the screen, right? Behind the scenes. So first thing over here is I'm going to go inside the helpers and I'm going to have something called API base, right? Now inside API base, I have created a class called API base, right? I have a base URL which is going to fetch the users from this URL, right? So this URL gives me the list, a JSON list of user, right? Now I have two methods right over here in my whole app, I mean the whole API class. You can see the future dynamic which is going to get called. Now this get call is going to be a single method for your all get calls. If you have 1,000 get calls, you are going to use this single method to make a get calls. You're not going to write a different get calls for each and every thousands API calls into your app, right? So yeah, if you are a beginner, and I was at the beginner stage, I used to do that. I have written so much of get calls, and which is a bad practice, because the more code you have into your app, of course you're going to run with more bugs. So yeah, if you have a good structure of your coding, you will have a less bug, and you can easily manage your code. And that is what we are going to look today. Now this is the get method which is going to fetch the users from the server, and this get method is going to get or being used for all get calls, right? So this is the base class for our all API calls. Now if I want a post method, I'm going to write a post method which is being used for all the post calls, right? Now let's go ahead and take a look what we have inside get. So you can see right over here we have something called URL. We have a base URL over here, right? So we know when we comes to an API call, we always have a domain name or a specific string which should be embedded before making a particular route name. If we go more specific to a node, if your app is made in a node, then we have something called routes, and we have to embed that routes to get a particular API calls right into our app. So right over here, I'm going to use base URL, and inside my URL, I'm going to have a route name, right? So I'll just open this, and you can see I have something called response JSON, where I'm going to just store that response after getting decoded, right? So this is going to be an async function. If you know what is async and await, then you know why we need to use this, because what happened right over here, you can see the comments, right? The first command says that fetch user using a get call, and this is a single common method which is going to get used for all get API calls, right? Now we have something called response JSON, right? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to for my safety purpose, I'm going to use a try function. Okay, so what we are going to have is we are going to have a different kind of scenarios when we are going to communicate with our server, right? So where we are communicating with our server is we are getting communicated with our server right over here, called something called http.get method, right? So now, where do I get this HTTP from? So you need to know a flow that a Flutter gives you a package, something called http://, and to get an access, you should use your pubspec.yaml file, right? So you can see over here, I have two packages implemented into my app, and that is something called http and Flutter BLoC. I'm using http to make an API calls, and I'm using Flutter BLoC for state management. Right now we have 3 state management, loading, complete, and error, right? So for that particular purpose, I'm using these 2 package, right? And the HTTP I'm using into my API base to communicate with server, and you can easily get an access to a get method just like this, right? So what I'm doing is I'm going to have an HTTP get right over here. I'm going to call my method. I'm going to call an get method, which will tries to communicate with the server, right? Now, as I said, communicating to the server is going to get or is going to take some time, right? So what is going to happen? We want our app not to just wait right over here. I just want to wait over here. So what will happen? It will just not stop over here, and it will move forward for another piece of statements, right? Under line of code. So what happened? I will just make this statement as an await, and I'm going to get some response. Now, you might be knowing, right, what happened when you're going to get some response. We are going to get a response in a string, right? So it is not just going to hold the data, it is going to hold some more information into a response, right? Now, I want to parse this response. I want to decode this response so that I can use it into my app, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a different method called decode response, and I'm going to pass this response into my decode response method. And this method is right over here, right? Now you can see we have a type of dynamic, right? The reason why we need a dynamic is because we don't know what kind of response we are going to get, whether it is going to be a string, whether it is going to be integers, or whether it is going to be a float, boolean. So we don't know what kind of response we are going to get from the server, right? So we are using this method for a common parsing of data, whether it is get, post, and whatever the kind of data is, we are using this method in a common way. So a best practice is to use dynamic for your return type, right? So we have something called decode response right over here, and I'm giving a response of type HTTP response because we know we are getting a response from HTTP. So this response JSON this response is going to get is going to come over here, and we are going to parse it. Now, why we need to parse it, right? We need to use this into our app as not raw, but we need to convert that into a list, right? Because converting, we always want to convert our JSON data to a list to display into our app, right? So what we need to do is we will just go to this particular decode response, right? Now, as you know, if you are a backend developer, or you might be knowing this if you are a front-end developer as well, whenever you get something from the server, you're going to get a status code. So very first thing what you need to do is, this comes under a best practice. Very first thing when a response comes in, what you need to check is what kind of status code your response is having, right? So first thing you need to check is what is the status code your response is having. So I'm going to put my code into a switch, right? And I'm going to check what kind of case I'm having, whether it is 200 or whether it is 400 or whether it's 401, 403, 500, and XYZ, right? Now, we need to handle the errors when we are working with these HTTP calls. Now, if you want to take more control on your app, if you want to be more specific with your errors, then of course you need to write your custom errors. Now you can see in this piece of code, I have a custom error class written, which is going to throw the errors when I'm going to get that particular response code, right? That particular status code. So you can see over here, I'm going to put my response, I'm going to check my response.status code, right? And inside the status code, what I'm going to do is, if I have a case of 200, then of course I'm having some data. It means it's a successful response call from the, I'm getting a successful response from the server, and I have a data inside my app, right? So what happens in that particular of time is, I will just decode my JSON. I will come to this later on, but let's see what are the other case we have. We may get 400 status code, right? And that is going to be a bad request exception. So this is the class which is created by me, right? And I'm going to throw the same message which is getting from the server, which I'm getting from the server, right? So what happened on bad request exception, I'm going to get some response from the server, and I'm going to use that message to display into my app, right? Now, in the same way, if I have 401 and 403, I'm going to say that it's an unauthorized exception. This is the class written by me, and we have a full control what we need to do with this class. And I'm going to use the message which is coming from the server. So I'm just passing the message right over here. Now, we have 500 and a default, which is going to say that fetch data exception, right? So now, this is going to have a different exceptions, different status code, and we are going to handle our status code, and we are going to handle our response with the status code, and we are going to move forward along with that. Now, the first case what we got is 200, right? Now, inside 200, what we have is we have a successful call from the server, and we need to decode our data, which is coming from the server. Now, I'm going to get a response. I'm having a response in this variable right over here. I want to parse this, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use JSON.decode method, right? Now this is the method given by the library called .convert, right? So you just need to use .convert library to decode your JSON. What it will do is this will just decode your JSON, right? Whatever the string, you can see over here, we are having a response.body.toString. So this string is going to get decoded into a JSON, right? And I'm just printing the JSON, and I'm going to return this JSON response. So once the response is decoded, right, I'm going to have that response right over here, JSON response, right? Now, this method, this get, we are going to call from our state management. So we will see that how exactly the flow is going to get come. So this is the first thing what you need to do, right? So this is how you're going to parse your JSON, right? Right now your JSON is just parsed. Still it is not converted to the list, and still it is not ready to display on the screen, because we need to convert our JSON to list to display on the screen. So right now we have just decoded our JSON, right? We have just a raw JSON into our JSON response JSON variable, right? Now if we have a status code of 400, right, then we need to throw an exception with some message. Now, how do we throw this exception? How do we handle such cases, and how do we, have this implemented into our app? So first thing is we are going to create a separate class for that. It is best way to create a separate class to have all the exception implemented into that class, right? So I have something called exception base.dot right over here. If I just go ahead and click on it, let's just see, I have something called a class which is app exception. It is going to implement an exception. So this is the exception class given by the Flutter, right? Using this class, you can create your own exception, and you can throw that exception so that you can easily show some error message or exception on your screen. So what I have over here is I have an exception class created by me, app exception, and then this is the abstract class which I'm going to use to override the things, right? So now I'm going to have two stuff over here, that is the message which is going to get from our server, and the prefix, right? Now the prefix is going to be whatever you want to keep, right? So now you can see over here, I have commented right over here, we have, when our status code is 500 and others, we are going to have a fetch data, right, exception. So right over here into my API base, you can see over here we have fetch data exception, and we are passing the message error occurred while communicating with the server with the status code of this, right? Now, if I try to turn off my internet into my phone, and if I try to recall, or if I try to rebuild this app, it will just give me the same error message, and it will give me a button to retry. So let's go ahead and let's just go ahead and turn off the internet into our emulator and just see what we have, how we can handle this. So what I'm going to do is I'm gonna go ahead and turn off my internet, right? So here we go. it's off. Let me just check the mobile data as well. Okay, it's off. Now what I need to do is I will just go ahead, open my app right over here, and let me just reload my app. Let us just reload and see what we have. So it will just try to recommunicate with the server, and it is going to give me the error, of course, because we are not connected right now. Okay, so you can see over here, error during communication, no internet connection, right? So now we don't have any internet connection. So right over here, you can see inside this, we have something called error occurred while communicating with the server, and the status code is this. But we don't have the same error message right over there because, of course, we are not getting a status code of 500, but we are getting a socket exception, right? So when you are not ready with your internet connection, you're going to get a socket exception. So when you make a call http.get from here, right, from your API base.dart, I have kept into my try so that easily I can check whether there is an internet connection available or not, right? So before I make an internet call, I'm going to make sure that I have an internet connection or not. So whenever I tries to communicate with the server, I'm going to get a socket exception, and I'm going to get this message right over here, no internet connection, right? So if we just go ahead and take a look inside our exception base.dart, we have something called prefix and message, right? So every time we are going to have a prefix error during communication. So this is the prefix right over here, right? Error during communication. And what is the reason behind that error, right? That is going to be another error message. So you can see over here, no internet connection is coming from your API base, right? So we are going to have a prefix, and then we are going to have an actual error message why that particular error is being occurred, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, and I'm going to turn on my internet connection, right? And I don't know why I need to turn on the roaming. I'm sorry. Right now, let's go ahead and check whether we have an internet connection or not. So I'm going to click on retry. Okay, and it's try to fetch the users, and do we have any change into our UI? Yes, we got the data. Now, so you can see that you have a best way to handle the exception, right? So inside our exception base, we have a different kind of exceptions written into our application. That is our fetching data exception, bad request exception, and unauthorized user exception, right? So yeah, this is the two important part for the very first thing when you start implementing, or when you just start writing your code with the API call in the Flutter. Now, you are ready with your base exception, and you are ready with your API calls, right? Now, the third thing come in how you're going to manage the state of your app. As I mentioned, we are going to have a 3 state that is going to be an loading, completed, and error, right? So now, if I just go ahead into my app state, I have something called app state class of type generic, right? So I can pass whatever I want. So this is the generic type which is given by Flutter, and I have 3 variables declared inside this app, right? The status is going to hold the status, whether it is going to be a loading, complete, and error. So this status is not a class, but it's an enum. So you can see I have an enum implemented saying that it is going to be a loading, complete, and error. So I have an enum for our state management. We have 3 states: loading, complete, and error, right? Now this enum, I'm going to use it right over here to check the state of my app, right? Now, the second variable, that is going to be our data. If our app state is okay, if our app state is completed, we are going to get an data. And right over here, we don't know what is the type of our data. So of course, we are going to use a generic type, right? Now we are going to have a message where if we are able to connect, or if we are loading, or if we are able to, or if we are in error state, then of course we should have some message displayed for the user. Now, I'm going to detect, I'm going to use my app state dot loading, right? and I'm going to pass the message, right? So this message will show when I try to load my app. So if I just reload my app, I will get a circular progress bar indicator, a circular progress indicator, and down over there I'll get a message. So that message is right over here. This is the message, right? I'll be passing this message from the UI, and this will be cached over here. So you can see over here, when my the app state dot loading is there, I'm going to always have a status as status dot loading. So I'm just initializing my status with the constructor, and it is going to have a status dot loading. So when my app state is going to be loading, my status is also going to be loading. When my app state is completed, I'm going to have a status dot completed, and when I'm going to have an error, I'm going to have status as status dot error. So you can see now inside our helpers we have three class. One class that is API based, maintaining our all get, post, and all the method which is being used to communicate with the server. The exception base, which will be used to handle all your exceptions while you communicate with the server, right? And the third app state dot dart is being used to maintain the state of your app. So this is how you are going to have the app. Now of course, if you have more state into your app, right, you can create such enum, and you can go ahead and build it right into your app. Now let's go ahead and take a look what kind of data we have, okay, and how does it look like. So first thing first, what we need to do is let's go ahead and check it out, our models, what our models are like. Okay, so I'm sorry if you guys are posting any questions. I'm not able to see over here. I'll just try to take a look on my phone that if I have any questions or not. And do I have any questions? Oops. Okay. So could you share the code which is displayed so I can try it? Satish, what I can do is I should go ahead and really it would be great if I, just now if I share the code, so you guys can easily go ahead and change it into your code, and you can follow me along. Yeah, this is a good idea, Satish. So I'm sorry I'm seeing your message after kind of 10 minutes, I don't know. But yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a repository, right? Quickly, I'm going to create one repository, and inside that repository, I'm going to push my code on the GitHub, and that is going to be a public. So of course, you guys can easily go ahead and play with the code. This is really good idea. So just give me 2 minutes. I will use GDG BLR API. Okay, so I'm going to give some name. I don't know how it's going to look like, but how it's going to sound like. But yeah, I'm going to create the repository, and I'm going to quickly push it on the GitHub. Just a sec. Okay, I'm going to init. Okay, I'm going to init my GitHub repository, and come on. And what I'm going to do is I don't need readme.md. I'm going to push a message. I'm going to add my origin, right? And I'm going to push it right over here. Okay, so this is going to push the code on the GitHub. You can just go ahead and check the repository. I'm going to share the URL. I should go to the chat section. I will share the URL into the chat section so that you guys can go ahead and clone the repository, and you guys can follow me along with the code. So yep. Okay, I have shared the URL right inside the command section, I mean the chat section, and yes, we are good to go. Okay, so thanks Satish for this, and I appreciate your idea. It was quite good. I didn't got that into my mind, or I could have done it before. Yes, so we were on the app state management, right? So this is how you can manage your state, right? Now what uh, comes next is how we are going to make models for our data, right? So now right over here inside my user model, what I have is, for now I'm going to make my screen bigger because we are not going to use the emulator right now. So I have a user class, right? So this is the type what I'm going to get from the server. So I have something called page, right? I have something called per page. I have total pages. Then I have the actual data, and then I have, I'm sorry, and then I have something called add. I don't know what it is exactly, but right now we are just using the list of data, right? So I have a constructor which is being used, right? And this is the from JSON method where we will convert our JSON to a list, right? So this is the couple of methods are used to convert your JSON from your from JSON to a list. So what happened? I'll get a body. I'll try to decode my JSON, and then what I will do is right over here I will give my data from the models to this particular data given by the by map, string, and dynamic, right? So always we need two methods to parse our JSON, right? And this code actually you don't of course you need to know the working of this code, but you don't need to type again and again, or you don't need to type or retype every time, because we have something called JSON to Dart. We have serializer package which will make models for you automatically. You don't have to type every time, right? So yeah, but you need to know the working of that so that you can understand how it works exactly behind the curtains, right? Now, so this is the code. To be frank, I have not written this code. I have just copied my response, right? If I can just share my another screen, I have response along with that. I'll just try to bring it over here. Yeah, so you can see over here, right over here, I have a response from this particular part, right? So right over here, what I have is this is the response. This is basically a JSON string, right? And I'm sorry for that. I actually use that for my channel. I should be muting it, or I don't know what exactly. Media source alert box is right over here. Yes, this should not come right now. Okay, so sorry for that. So yeah, so right over here you can see we have the response which is coming from the server, and this is the data. What I will do is I will just go ahead and copy this data, and what I will do is let me just open my Dart to JSON. So I will just use my Dart to JSON. I mean JSON to Dart, not just Dart to JSON. I'm sorry for that. So we have something called JSON to Dart for parsing our response to the, yes, right over here. Let me just bring in, yeah. So you can see over here, this is the tool created by Javier, and that guy is giving us this tool, and I use this tool every time, to be frank. So I will just paste my response over here. So you can see I have pasted my whole response, and I'm going to give a name of my class that is going to be a user, and I'm going to say generate Dart, right? That is going to generate a Dart for me, a Dart whole code. So I don't need to write it all the time. I will just go ahead, copy, and paste it into my app. Okay, so it is ready to use. Now this is ready to use, right? And yeah, but you need to know the behind the working of behind. There are so many articles available on the Medium, right, in the Flutter community, which is in that articles, these things are explained so nicely, right? And what happened, okay, so we are ready with our model. So right over here you can see we have a model, but let's just take a look what we have inside of our data. So right over here inside data we have something called ID, email, first name, last name, and avatar, right? So almost we are using all these four stuff into our UI, and this is the important part right now. So you can see over here we are parsing it using a user model, but now inside the helpers we just got the JSON, right? We have not converted that into a list. So let's go ahead and try to convert that to a list, right? So inside my repository I have a method called so you can see over here I'm going to call an user. I need an user variable. I need a user data, right? So what I need to do is I will create one class which will be kind of repository, which will be used to communicate with our helper API base class. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a new object for my helper API base, and you can see over here I need a list of type user. So it is going to return the type of user. So what happened over here, I'm going to call the get method, which is written by us into a API helper, API base inside the helper folder. So over here I have helper.get, and I'm going to pass this string, which is going to get appended after the base URL, right? So you just need to take care of your string right over here. So you can see over here, if you just take a look over here, you can see we have kind of similar string over here. API user page equals to 1. API this part till over here, I'm sorry, till over here we have inside our base URL, and after that we are passing things into the URL, the URL string, right? So if you just take a look over here inside API base, we are going to get the URL just as what we are passing from there, right? So once we understand the flow, of course we are going to put some debug pointers, and then we are going to debug our app so that we will easily get to know what is happening with our app. Right, so inside my user repository, what is happening over here is, as I said, we are going to get the decoded JSON, right? We are getting a decoded JSON, but we need to convert that decoded JSON into a list, right? Now, who is going to do that? Now, as I said, we have something called user.fromJSON, which is being given by the auto-generated code, which we didn't write actually. So right over here, we are going to get the JSON. So just take a look, we are getting a JSON which is decoded, right? So basically we will get a string, then we will decode that into the JSON. Now, we have a map of string and dynamic, right? Now, why do we need this? So right over here, a simple reason for this is, if you'll just take a look on all the type of data are not same. For this three, it is fine. We have a same type of data, that is integer, integer, integer. But take a look on the last two data. The first is a type of list, right? And another is a type of add. Now this is going to be a list, and this also is going to be a list, right? So add is a class which is being created over here by the auto-generated code. So when it's going to pass a JSON over here, we are going to have all this stuff, right? Now, right over here inside our browser, just take a look. Yes, see, okay. So right over here, on the left hand side, that is always a string, right? That is page per page total. So you can see everything is in a double quotes, right? So on the left hand side, everything is a string. So you know, if you work with JSON, always we are going to have a keys into a string, right? So we have a key into a string. So of course we have a string right over here, right? Because we always know key is going to be a string, but we don't know what kind of value that particular key is going to hold. So in our case, for first four, we have integer, and for last two, we have list, and then we have a list of data as well, right? So now what happened if I can convert this, if I want to convert this, if I know specifically I'm going to get only integer data, then instead of dynamic, I'm going to use integer. But right now I don't know what I'm going to get, what kind of data I'm going to get. So of course I'm going to use dynamic, right? So this will allow you to catch any type of data to parse from JSON to a list, right? So what we are going to do is, I have a JSON, I'm going to hold, or I'm going to take, use my key from the JSON, right? Just like this, and I'm going to give that to my page, right? So now actually I'm assigning the data from JSON to my list, or to this particular user class. So this page will get initialized by the JSON which is coming from the server. Now in the same manner I'm going to use for all four stuff. But right over here, when it comes to a list, I'm going to take care of some extra stuff, right? What is that? The first thing is, I don't want to loop it, right? Or I don't want to create an instance when there is no data inside our JSON data. If the list is empty, then I don't want to happen this. I don't want my compiler to compile this piece of code, because I don't want to run into run some error, right? When we don't have anything into our data of JSON. So I'm going to check whether it is, when it is not null, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list of data, right? And then I'm going to loop my this JSON which is coming from the server. So now again, if I can just show you, this JSON is not formatted properly. So what I can do is I'll just go ahead and try to use JSON lint so that you guys can see what is happening. JSON lint. So I'll try to put right over here, and I'll try to validate my JSON. Okay, let me just bring in this as well. I'll just close this part, right? And I'll bring this one. Yes. So now you can see over here, right over here, inside data, you can see we have a list, right? So after, like, whenever I'm going to get some data inside this, in this particular data, I'm going to loop this one piece of JSON key and value every time to convert it into a list. So now if we just go ahead and take a look inside our code, what we have is right over here, I'm going to loop this data. As you saw, it's a list, so I'm going to loop it, and then I'm going to keep adding into my list. So this is the list which is being which we created right over here, right? We didn't create it, which is being created by the code, right? So yeah, we will be keep adding those lists, right? But again, see over here, that is also a JSON inside over there, and we need to even parse that JSON. So of course we are going to use from JSON again, and that is the from this class, right? So yeah, this is how we can convert our user, or we can use our models to get the JSON converted to a list, right? So now this fetch user, I'm going to use this method, and I'm going to get a list from a type of user. Like, I'll be getting the instance of user from this particular fetch user list. Now I need to use this fetch user list inside my state management business logic, right? So that I will get to know whether I'm getting a data, or whether I'm getting an error, or whether I'm getting a server error, or whether I'm getting making a call, right? So now we are done with our API base, we are done with our app state, we are done with exception based dart, and we are even done with our user model and a user repository. Now we are only remaining with our BLoC pattern, right? So what happened in this? Okay, so this is a different I mean, I would say that explaining everything into a dip for the BLoC is totally a different different topic, because BLoC is a state management technique, and yeah, you need to know more. You will just get in this piece of code, you will just get to know what I have written, or for what purpose I'm using it, but there are more way or more different way to use this BLoC, right? And yeah, you just need to have a research on that particular part, or you have to read some documentations for that, and you will get to know what it is exactly. So now what I'm doing inside this user block is I'm going to have one stream, right? And I'm going to have one stream sync. Now, what is stream and stream sync? Now, stream sync is going to hold our state of our app, right? So whenever you are going to load something, you're going to say your sync, that you're going to add something into your sync, right? That's this I'm loading my app, or I just got an error, or maybe my data is ready to display. This kind of things you can do with your sync, right? And user list stream is going to handle your it is going to handle your stream, right? A stream controller. So what happened over here is I have a stream controller, right? Now this stream controller, why I need is, in the UI we are using a widget called stream builder, and this stream builder accept a controller of type stream controller. So I have a controller over here, then I have a stream sync, right, which will add the data, right, which will add the data into the sync, I mean into the stream, and this controller dot stream is going to make available that data on the UI. So what happened over here, inside my constructor, I just initialize my stream controller, user list controller. Then why I need this user repo? Inside user repo, we have a method which we are going to make a call, right, every time to get a data from our app. So what I need is I want to call this fetch user list, right, which is right over there. So this is the fetch user list which is going to get called, and what is going to happen is, of course, we are going to make our app to show a loading screen first when we are going to make an API call. So what I'm going to do is, inside my user list sync, I'm going to add my app state into a loading, and I'm going to pass a message called fetch users. So now if we will just go ahead and take a look inside our emulator, you can see we even see inside our helpers that how we are displaying this message, right? So this message will be cached inside our helper app state right over here, right? App loading and message, and that message will be displayed. So this is fully dynamic, you know, and you can use whatever the message you want to display, whether it is for loading, or whether it is for wait, or whatever the message you want to show. So now I will reload my app and we'll see what we have. So it will just, in few seconds it will load, but you will be able to see we have a fetch user right over there, right? So we have a fetch user right over there. So now, very first thing, when my BLoC get initialized with my stream widget, what happened is it will first show the fetching user screen. So this is nothing but this is just changing the state of our whole app. So this is going to change the state of our app, right? And this is going to add our app state to the loading state, and it will display this message. Now, while loading, I want to get the data from the server, right? So now you can see this user method, right? The fetch user list, right? And this is going to get called from our repository, and it is going to return a data of type user, right? So it will return me the single user data, that is nothing but the from our models. You can see that is this part, right? Where is the data? This part. So we are going to get every time this data, right, to get an access into our UI. So these are the data which we will be getting an access from our UI. So this user model is available for us from our user repository, right? We will call this method from our BLoC dart, BLoC.dart, user BLoC.dart. Okay. So now this will give me okay. So now you can see over here we have an await function. So of course this will not get called, right, until and unless this is fulfilled, right? So now until and unless we make our app state to add that app state dot completed, we will be only showing the loading screen, because still now we don't have a data available for us. As soon as we have a data available to display to the users, we will make our sync to add the state of completed, right? So now right over here I was passing a message to display to the user, but right now I need to pass the actual data to display on the screen, right? So what happened over here is I am going to get the data from my repository after converting from JSON to a list, right? And I have a data to be displayed into our sync so that my stream builder can easily get the state, and then I can easily get the data from this snapshot, right? And in case if we have any error in this particular section, right, and we are managing that particular errors everywhere inside our app API base and inside our exception base, right? Now we are putting these two statements into a try so that while making an API call, if we have any kind of error, we are going to catch that error, right? So whether it is going to be a bad call, exception, whatever the class we have made, right? That particular exception we are going to add right over here. So now we are going to get that particular error message every time when we are going to get this error, right? So I'm going to put that error message right from this E to string so that I can easily get that particular error message on my screen, right? And well, on the dispose, I'm going to dispose my controller. I'm going to close my controller because whenever I'm going to switch my page, I need to dispose my controller, and that is the best practice to misbehave, to protect your app to misbehave with the data, right? So now you can see we have a fetch user list which is going to manage everything. Now let's take a look on the full flow of our app, how it calls the from how it goes from UI to BLoC, then how it goes to the app state, right? And then how it goes to the user model, and how it goes to the okay. So let's go ahead and try to put some debug points. I hope I will not mess it up because there will be so much of debug points. So first thing what it will get, okay, let's go ahead and first take a look on the UI. Let's complete the UI part as well so that you guys will not get confused, right? So now I will just directly go to the user list screen, that is this part, right? Now another thing is the loading screen, that is okay, first we'll go to the user list screen. So right over here I have list view.separated, right, where I have a divider for every list data. I'm going to give a length of the data which is coming from the server, that list.length. Now this list.length is nothing but the data which I'm going to pass from my main screen to over here after my data is available from the server, right? And okay, I didn't got a feedback on okay, I got a question is, okay, 1 second, I'm getting, okay, so I got a question in the get request call. Would the function fail if there is a new error apart from socket exception? So yeah, I would say that right over here inside our code, let me just take a look. Apart from if we have any exception from socket exception, then of course it is not going to catch, because right over here the code only says that it will only get catched on socket exception, right? But I would pretty much good to say that apart from socket exception, you're not going to get any exception, right? Why is that? Because see, I will make it clear, is because when we are going to get a socket exception when you are not connected to the internet, right? Now if you start creating any if your internet is available and if you're ready to go ahead and run this statement, if you are ready to go inside the get part of this statement, see, make sure who is going to return this error is this get method, right? Now this method is ready to use when if you don't have a socket exception, right? Then we are going to get something. It means that we are able to connect with our internet, I mean with our server, right? Now depending on the server response and the status code which is written by the backend developers, in our case we have the same scenario. The backend developers has written in such a way that if you have data available for you, your status code is going to be 200, right? If the data is not available and there is something wrong with the server, you're going to get a status code, right? So this code is mature enough to handle all your errors. But if a question is, if you get any other error, for example, if you want to parse your string to double, right, in this particular section. For example, if you want to try um, for example, I'm going to put um, gdg dot to double, then of course I'm going to get an error, right? I cannot just go ahead and convert this thing to a double, right? So the thing is, for this particular statement, right, for this particular API calls and for this particular scenario, you will only get a socket exception, nothing else, because we know what we are writing, right? And if the possibility of getting a socket error is because of this statement, right? And if we are ready to handle this is using socket exception. If we are not having any error, but further, if we are going to have an error while parsing the data, then that is going to get cached into our into our repository. So right over here, if you mess up with your code, and if your code is coming, for example, right over here inside our model, user model dart. Okay, so right over here you can see you're getting a list of data, right? But you mess it up with some other type. You forgot to put a list, but you just kept as in string. So over here your code may fail and you will get an error. But right now, we always know that what kind of response we are going to have, and we are ready to handle it. So yeah, this code is mature enough to handle all the errors, I would say, right? But yeah, every code has a bug, so maybe in some case there is a less chance, but there may be a case there it may fail, and but not always, right? So yeah, I would say this code is mature enough to handle all the exceptions, because we are handling in a pretty good way, right? So I hope I answered your question, Lakshman. I'm sorry if I'm Lakshmana. Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was correct. Yeah. Now, where were we? Yeah, we were on the user list screen. Yeah. So now right over here, I have an item builder which will build my list style, right? So trailing is nothing but the icon which I'm putting that in heart, right? And then leading is nothing but the avatars of the user. I'm using image, right? And then I'm using the avatar variable from my user list, displaying it right away. Then I'm displaying the title as their first name and last name, and subtitle, it is going to be a text of their email, right? So yeah, this is my UI screen when it is going to get displayed when we are going to have when our app is on a complete state, when we are having all data available. Another thing is we have a loading screen, which is pretty simple. I'm using container, I'm using center, which is having a container. Then I'm having a column with 2 children, circular progress indicator, and then I have a size block to get some space, and then I have loading message coming from our BLoC, right? So you can see over here we have a BLoC, and it is coming from that directly. We have an error screen as well, so it is also pretty simple. I have a column, it has a padding, and it shows the error message with the center alignment of a text, and then I have a flat button which is saying that you should retry. Now what happened on the main screen we see now. Okay, so I have a refresh indicator. On refresh, we are going to call fetch user list, which is from BLoC. This is the business logic available for us. So you can see over here we have user BLoC right from here, user BLoC, right? And I have a BLoC right over here. And this BLoC I'm going to call every time when I want to refresh my data. So if I just go ahead and pull this back, pull this down, I will get a refresh indicator, and it will pull the data again, right? Now I have a stream builder of type app state. Why I need an app state is because our stream builder is going to change the UI according to the state of your app. So you can see we have an app state, and what type of data inside our app state we are going to have. So we are having a type of app state, and we have a data of user, right? So on snapshot, we are going to receive, you can see over here, we have an async snapshot of type app state user, right? So right over here, I'm going to assign a stream which we build over there, right over here inside a BLoC. So right over here we have built a stream, right? Now this stream I'm going to assign it right over here. Sorry, very man. Yes, so I'm going to assign this directly into my stream so that anything that changes, right, it will invoke this stream builder right away, and it will rebuild our UI. It will eventually call the build method, and your UI will get updated without doing anything, right? So if anything get changes on this stream, so this is nothing but somewhere it is having a deep inside your widget tree, it is having a listenable, and if anything get changes on this particular user stream list, right, it will update your UI. Now what happened, I will just take a if condition where I will just see that I have a data or not. Now this snapshot gives you a stream controller, I mean the stream builder is capable enough to say you whether your snapshot is nothing but the data coming from the server, is having any data or not. If it is not having a data, of course we are not going to do anything, we are just going to display empty screen, right? Or you can have your more way of displaying the stuff so that you can manage your UI easily. But now what if I have a data, right? If I have a data, that means I need to check my status, what kind of status I'm in right now. If I have a data and but still my status is loading, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to return the loading screen, right? But as soon as my data is available to display, right, this will get invoked, right? Again the stream builder will get called, right? Again the build method will get called, and again it will see yes, it has a data. Now the status is been changed from loading to completed, right? So it will go ahead and display the user list which we just saw before, user list screen, right? But now while performing the first step, we ran up with an error. Maybe we were not able to connect with the server, or maybe we just used a wrong URL. In that particular time, what we need to what is going to happen is first we are going to have a status of loading. Then once our call get completed, right, once the calls get completed inside our user block, what is going to happen, see over here, our 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 app is going to get an error inside this statement because we are not able to connect with the internet, or we are able to connect with the internet but we are having a 404 status, I mean 400 status, or maybe 501 status, and that is an error, right? So what we need to do is we are catching and we are adding, so this adding something into a stream, right, says that you need to rebuild your UI. So what happened inside that is rebuilding your UI is nothing but changing something into the stream. So it will rebuild your UI calling the build method. So right now our status is changed to an error, and it will easily display an error screen, right? So now what we need to do is you might get to know what is happening, the total flow of our app, right? So I will just give you a quick look on what is happening into our app. So we have a BLoC fetch user. So from UI, we will go directly to the fetch user, right? From fetch user, first we will add a loading screen, right? After that, inside my user repository, I'm going to use a fetch user list, right? From my helper right over here, I'm going to pass from which route I need to get a data, right? So I will use get function which is written by us, right? I will open it, and right over here it will try to fetch the data, right? If I have a data, then I'm going to decode it. If I don't have, then I'm going to throw a fetch socket exception. And if I have a data, but if data is not having a status code of 200, then I'm going to throw an errors, right over here. But if I have a data available with a status code of 200, then I'm going to parse it, right, from the string to a JSON, right? And this is going to return back to our user repository, right? So from user repository, we are calling this particular method .get. So this basically going to go back, this return JSON response is going to go back right over here, and this is going to return to our user repository right over here. So now I have a JSON response over here, and I want to convert that JSON response to our user class. So what I will do, I will go to my user class from JSON, and of course it is going to parse this data, and then it is going to return the whole data from our of type user, right? So now from our repository we have we got some data, right? So again we will go back to our user block, right? And we have a type of user data right over here, and then we add it to our stream, and then we rebuild our UI. So this is the whole flow of our app, and this is the best way to manage your app state and to make an API calls, I would say, because this is pretty simple. You have a less amount of less line of code and less amount of code, which will result to a better state management, better code management as well. And yeah, you will have a less bug if you have a less code. That is more important. So yeah, uh, this is how we can easily make API calls. Now right over here, what you need to do is inside your repository you need to put your all calls right over here, right? Whether it is going to be maybe it is going to be a put call, or maybe, yeah, even you can separate your calls. If the calls are only user related inside our repository, you can create one more folder saying that it holds the calls of only users, right? Then you can separate it according to you, but yeah, this is the basic structure which you need to follow every time when you build some app. Now what we're going to do is we are going to put the debug, right? So maybe if you're totally new and you don't know how to debug, then I would like to share that way also. So how you can debug into, yeah, if you're using Visual Studio Code, then you can just easily see how I debug, right? And if I'm not a fan of Android Studio, but I use Visual Studio Code, and I debug how I debug into that particular app. So first thing what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some debug pointers, right? And let's see what we have. So as you know, our UI starts from this. I mean, our first call is going to be a fetch user, right? After fetch user, what we need to have, what we're going to have is, I don't know. So let's go ahead and take a look what we have. So now as soon as I rebuild my app, my cursor, I mean the debug pointer is right over here, so it is going to be stopped over here as soon as it hit this point. So you can see now I am just right over here, and inside my debug list I'm going to have all my local variables, so that I can easily check right over here what my variables are holding, and you will get to know how exactly it works. Now I'm going to go ahead and step inside this function, right? So now you can see we are inside our block, right? So first thing inside our block, we are going to create a sink, right? Then I'm going to create a stream, right? Okay, so now over here we created our sink, and our app is currently adding a loading state, which should result to a changing to our UI, right? So now you can see right over here I am passing the message. So now over here you can see the message, what are the local variables we have. We can easily debug right over here. So right now we don't have anything in data message status right now, but we have something in message which we are passing from our UI, right? So we have something called fetching user, I'm sorry, and that will be passed right over here. So right now it is null, but as soon as I go ahead and initialize it, right, I'm going to have a message as a user. So now I have something called user. So now once it is got, once it get the correct information, right, I mean the correct execution, it is going to change the UI, of course. Let's see when it is going to change the UI. So now it is actually trying to communicate with the server, okay, and it is just waiting over here. So now you can see I am inside my the URL. So now you can see my URL is something like this, and my base URL is something like this. Now what is going to happen is I will go to my response.await. So now I'm base URL plus my this URL, and this is going to communicate with our server, and I'm going to get some data inside my response. So now you can see before my data comes in, the UI got updated, right? Because right now the app status is loading. So now the app status at the fetching user, you can see the UI got updated, but now we have a data, we need to update the UI again, right? So let's see how we can do that. So again, we go to our right now you can see we have some datas over here. So right over here inside user, we got the data. So what we are doing after we got a data, we are changing our app state by adding something into a sync, right? Now I'm going to add something into a sync. So of course it will create a new variable using, new object for that, and it update the state of my app from loading to a complete. So let's see how it is going to do that. It is complete, it is updating right now. And now let's go back to our UI that will rebuild, right? So now we are on our app rebuild. So you can see this is the how we can easily debug, and you can see the each and every line of execution, how it is executing, right? Okay, so this was a part of how you can debug the code, but let's try to have some another error so that we can easily get to know how it is throwing the exception, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mash up my URL so that it will throw me some error. Where is my URL? Okay, right over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove this HTTPS, right? And of course this is a wrong URL. You cannot communicate without HTTP. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to rebuild my app, right? And you can see there is some error, invalid arguments, unsupported in URL. So yeah, right now our URL is wrong. So this is the error we are getting. But let's just try to go ahead and debug one more time how it is generating the errors, how it is throwing the exception. So first thing first is fetch user list. Let's rebuild and let's get stop into our fetch user list. We are right over here. Okay, now first we are going to change the state of our app, that is loading, right? Now it is creating a new instance, and it is changing the state now with a message, right? Now we will just go ahead and make a call to our UI, make a call to our server, right? So now I am right over here into an API base, and it is waiting to get a call. Now you can see over here we got some exception, right? So you can see we got an exception right over here, and we were in the add list sync into an error. So we will just see what exactly we are doing. So now it is just creating a new instance of the sync, right? And you can see now we are adding it, but we will see it into our app state. So now you can see we are getting the exact message. Right now it is null. Let me just go ahead and take a look what we have inside our local variables. Let me just initialize. Yes, okay. So now you can see we have an exact error message that is right over here, right? The message is unsupported scheme, and then the same message which we are able to see, right? So yes, we have even an error name displayed, and then we have an error message displayed directly into our screen. So yeah, so this is how it exactly works, and I would say that it is pretty good to have this structure into your API calls, right? Because this makes a perfect I would say a perfect coding way, a mature coding way, where you will have a less errors or less bugs to handle it. You can easily handle if you have a less bugs. So yeah, it was a quite long session, I'm sorry for that, but yeah, I hope you you actually got to know how you can handle your errors, how you can generate your custom exceptions, and how you can easily manage your code without writing so much of code. Now, there's a story behind for me, like when I was writing my first app, right? Uh, Maybe I created one file for all get and post calls. For example, I have five calls in my app. Then I have created a 5 different files for my app, and that is bad because you are just rewriting your code again and again. You are just changing the URL, nothing else. So right now, this is the best way to do that, because I was totally noob in that maybe uh, maybe in early 2018 when I was just learning the Flutter, and yeah, I used to mash up with all those things. But yeah, this is the best way to do this. I would say that. But I know the beginners won't start with this, but I would say that it is good to start with this. It is you should not, get more confused by thinking that, oh my god, that I'm going to use BLoC now, BLoC is so tough or something like that. Of course it is not tough. You just need to understand uh, how it exactly works, and yeah, it is pretty simple. But you should know how it exactly works, so it is going to be a pretty simple. So now I would say that I should wrap up this session, and um, I have shared the link in the description as well, I mean the chat section as well, so that you guys can go ahead and have this, and you can play around with the UI along with the API structure, so that you will be able to know how it is exactly working. Yeah, I would recommend you to just go and play with it, so that you will understand how exactly it is working. um, Shatish, did you got the URL I already shared in the same section? You're not having? Maybe I'm on the wrong, I don't know, maybe I'm on the wrong channel. I don't know exactly. So I would like to do one thing. I will share this URL inside my, I'm sorry, yeah, I didn't share the URL only. I shared the URL, but I don't know what exactly happened. Okay, so what I will do is I will try to give the URL in my group, and then you guys will get the URL into the chat section, because I cannot, I just pasted the URL, but I don't know where exactly it went. Um, mm, 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 mm. Yes, so I will just paste the URL right over here. Yeah, so you'll be getting the URL. I'm sorry for that. I don't know what went wrong, but yeah. So now if you guys are having any question related to Flutter, or any question related to the session which I shared, right, we can go ahead and discuss. We got kind of 10 minutes, 10 to, yeah, 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes to discuss. We can just go ahead and take a look on the questions as well. So yeah, the questions are most welcome. uh, Thanking you, Rakshit, for continuously being active in the chat section and helping the other peoples to know about the question, because I was not able to interact more, because morely I was focusing on the explanation part. So yes, thanks a lot, Rakshit, for that. How about Lakshmana? I hope I answered your questions. Do I have any questions? So yeah, I'm saying a late hi to the all who join over here. I didn't even say hi, and I started my session directly because we were pretty late, and I was really scared that maybe we will be not able to complete in the till 6, because I don't want to make it more bigger than 6. But yeah, I'm glad that I completed before 30 minutes. Okay, so Yeah, I would like to wrap up the session right over here, and let me just go ahead and interact with the team so that we will get to know what exactly we need to do next. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry. I'll be posting soon I'll try one more time from my another screen. I don't know why I'm not able to paste the link of my GitHub repo. I'm really sorry for that, but I would be able to do that. I don't know why. Okay, okay. Is it there now? I don't know why I'm not able to put the URL. I can see right over here I'm able to put something into the chat. I'm going to say, hey, is it available? Even the hey, okay, hey is there, but I guess I'm not able to put the URL. So what we can do is, let me just try something like this. So there is something, if I maybe because of some reason we cannot put the URL. Okay. Right over here, you can just go ahead and search this repository, right, on the GitHub. You might able to get. So I'm going to make it slash make sure you use github.com. Because of some reason I'm not able to paste the URL. It is not sending actually. So I have not make sure, but or else I can just go ahead and display it right over here so that you guys can easily, it is not quite long. So this is the URL. Yes, you might be able to see now what exactly the URL is. Sorry, I messed up. Okay, this is the URL. I'm sorry. Yes, so right over here we have the URLs. You can go ahead and type it, and yeah. So okay, after the session is ended, right, I will put the URL into the description directly. Okay, I will say the JDG team to put the URL into the comment section pinned so that you can go ahead and grab it, or else you can go ahead and take it from the the screen as well.